Deep inside a hardened command facility, carved into the Zagros Mountains, 3 flags hang side by side on a concrete wall: Iranian, Russian, and Chinese. Below them, 12 men huddle over a holographic table, displaying the Persian Gulf in real time. This meeting has no official name. It does not appear in any public communique, but Western intelligence agencies, through signals intercepts and a single well-placed human asset, know exactly what was discussed. The plan was elegant on paper, brutally naive in execution. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, the IRGCN, had spent 18 months studying American carrier strike group patterns in the Gulf. They identified what they called a golden window, a 12-hour period during a scheduled U.S. exercise when the carrier USS Abraham Lincoln would be positioned northeast of Bahrain, leaving the destroyer screen temporarily extended. And that is where the USS Resolute would be. Alone, vulnerable, or so they thought. Russia's contribution was sophisticated electronic warfare packages, modernized Krasuka-4 jamming systems, loaded onto 3 vessels disguised as commercial tankers, registered to shell companies in the UAE. Their mission: blind the Resolute's radar during the critical approach window. China's role was subtler and more dangerous. Beijing provided Iran with modified YJ-12 supersonic anti-ship missile telemetry data, classified performance profiles that would let IRGCN planners calculate minimum safe engagement distances with unsettling precision. Deniable, devastating. Exactly the kind of grey zone warfare Beijing has perfected. The operation called for 42 IRGCN fast attack craft, a swarm tactic ripped directly from asymmetric warfare doctrine, supplemented by 60 Revolutionary Guard naval commandos carrying Russian-supplied EMP grenades and cutting charges for the ship's sensor masts. The objective: board the USS Resolute, neutralize her crew, and parade an American destroyer on Iranian state television within 24 hours. The propaganda value alone, they calculated, would be worth a decade of sanctions. Let me ask you something. Comment below, did you think Iran would actually try this? Because what happened next is why military planners worldwide lost sleep for months. The USS Resolute is the newest Arleigh Burke Flight 3 destroyer in the United States Navy. Commissioned only 14 months before this incident, she displaces 9,800 tons and stretches 510 feet of layered steel and composite armor. Her AN/SPY-6V1 radar, the most advanced shipborne air and missile defense system ever built, can simultaneously track over 1,500 objects from sea-skimming drones to ballistic missile warheads at ranges exceeding 550 kilometers. She carries 96 vertical launch system cells, loaded with a mix of SM-3 Block 2A interceptors, Tomahawk cruise missiles, and ESSM Block 2 quad-packed surface-to-air missiles. Her 5-inch deck gun fires 60 rounds per minute with GPS-guided projectiles accurate to within meters. 2 Phalanx CIWS systems, each firing 4,500 rounds per minute, create overlapping shields of tungsten on every approach vector. And below decks, attached to the ship's marine detachment, is a 12-man VBSS, Visit, Board, Search and Seizure team, cross-trained with naval special warfare. These are not men who panic. These are men who plan for exactly this. The Iranian planners had one intelligence failure that undid everything. Their satellite imagery was 17 hours old when they launched. What they didn't see, the Resolute had conducted an unscheduled replenishment at sea just that morning, bringing her magazines to 100% capacity. They brought 60 men with rifles to take a ship loaded enough to destroy a small nation. If you're watching this and you know someone who served on a destroyer, drop their name in the comments. Let's honor them right now. 11 a.m. Strait of Hormuz. 42 vessels, disguised as dhows, fishing trawlers, and light cargo boats, spread across 12 nautical miles in a loose crescent formation. The classical IRGCN swarm pattern documented in every Navy threat assessment since 2006. The Russian jamming ships activate at 10:47 a.m. For 11 minutes, they degrade portions of the electromagnetic spectrum used by civilian GPS and some secondary radar bands. 11 minutes. That is how long they believed they had. Inside the Resolute's Combat Information Center, the watch officer, Lieutenant Commander Priya Sharma, has been tracking this formation for 41 minutes. The Krasuka jamming is logged, identified, and compensated for within 90 seconds by the SPY-6's adaptive processing algorithms. The system doesn't go blind, it adapts. "I have 42 contacts," she says quietly. "All non-compliant with maritime traffic patterns. Recommend we go to Condition 1. Commanding Officer Captain Marcus Webb, a 22-year veteran who served 2 deployments in the Arabian Gulf, doesn't hesitate. "Set Condition Zebra. All hands, battle stations." What follows is not panic, it is choreography. 212 crew members move to their posts in under 4 minutes, a full 45 seconds faster than required by procedure. Every watertight door seals, every weapon system goes live. The CIWS barrels begin their slow readiness rotation. Below, the VBSS team gears up in silence. Plate carriers, NODs, suppressed rifles. On the bridge, Captain Webb watches the radar picture and says nothing for 30 seconds. Then, "They want the deck. Let's give them the deck." 11:31 a.m. The swarm accelerates. 42 boats converging from 3 vectors simultaneously, exactly as American wargamers predicted, exactly as the IRGCN practiced for 18 months on Lake Urmia. The Resolute broadcasts warnings on maritime distress frequencies in Farsi, Arabic, and English. 3 warnings, ignored. At 600 meters, the first RPG round fires from a dhow on the port quarter. It skips off the water 20 meters short. The phalanx on the port side tracks, calculates, holds. At 200 meters, 6 fast boats accelerate to ramming speed. The phalanx engages. In 4 seconds, 2,000 rounds shred the lead boats into aluminum confetti. The concussive shockwave rolls across the water. 3 boats behind them veer off involuntarily, their crews' nerve breaking in the face of what they just witnessed. 31 boats continue. Grappling hooks arc upward. 12 commandos reach the deck. 12, not 60. The approach cost them 48 men before a single boot touched steel. The 12 who made it stood on the Resolute's deck for approximately 22 seconds before the forward hatch opened and 6 VBSS operators, moving in 2-man teams, cleared them with a precision that security footage would later describe as textbook. No wasted rounds, no hesitation. The deck was clear before the rest of the swarm could regroup. Captain Webb: "How many on deck?" Response: "0, sir. Deck is clear." Webb looks at his watch. 11 minutes since first contact. Comment right now. What would you feel in that moment if you were on that ship? I genuinely want to know. 11:42 a.m. The swarm is not finished. 29 boats remain. Their commanders, watching the disaster on deck from 400 meters, make a decision. Fire the Nor anti-ship missiles they've been holding in reserve. 6 launchers, 6 missiles. The first missile is detected at launch plus 1 second. By launch plus 4 seconds, the Resolute's fire control system has computed intercept solutions for all 6. SM-2 missiles leave the VLS cells with ground-shaking thunder. 5 intercepts, clean kills at 3 to 7 kilometers out. The 6th missile, flying a terrain-hugging, sea-skimming profile, survives to 800 meters before the starboard phalanx tears it apart in a burst that lights up the Gulf like a flashbulb. Fragments impact the ship's hull. 3 sailors are treated for minor injuries, none are hospitalized. And then, from the north, the sound changes. The FA-18E Super Hornets arrive. 8 of them, launched from the USS Abraham Lincoln, 60 nautical miles northeast, arrive at supersonic speed with full air-to-surface loadouts. They were scrambled 14 minutes ago, the moment the Resolute went to battle stations, because in the US Navy, no destroyer fights alone. The remaining boats have nowhere to run in the confined waters. A GM-154 JSOW glide bombs full first, precision-guided, near-silent, arriving before the boats can even hear the aircraft. Then Maverick missiles, then strafing runs at wave height. In 9 minutes, the surface threat is neutralized, completely. The math is brutal. 29 boats entered that window. The seabed of the strait now holds what's left of 29 boats. The 3 Russian jamming ships, having watched all of this unfold on their own screens, turn northwest and accelerate toward international waters at maximum speed. They are photographed doing so by a P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft that has been orbiting overhead for the past hour. Russia's role, deniable no longer. 12 p.m. Onward. Washington's response comes in 2 forms. The first is diplomatic. Simultaneous demarches delivered to Tehran, Moscow and Beijing within 2 hours of the incident, containing satellite imagery, signals intelligence summaries, and a single sentence that diplomats described as the most direct language used in a formal communication since the Cuban Missile Crisis. The second response is kinetic. 6 Tomahawk cruise missiles, launched from the Resolute's own VLS cells, strike the IRGCN's Bandar Abbas fast boat staging facility, the logistics hub that supported this operation, with precision that leaves the fuel depots in ruins and the maintenance hangars collapsed, while the surrounding civilian port infrastructure remains intact. The targeting was deliberate. The message was surgical. 2 additional strikes from B-2 Spirit bombers, flying from Diego Garcia, hit the radar installation and the communications relay station that coordinated the swarm attack. Both facilities ceased to function within seconds. Neither existed in publicly acknowledged Iranian military maps. Both were identified through intelligence collection that Iran's security services will spend years trying to understand. At the United Nations Security Council, China and Russia veto a resolution condemning Iran. They have done this before. The world notices. The world also notices that neither country says a word in defense of what happened in the strait that morning. Silence in diplomacy is its own answer. By 1 p.m. local time, the Strait of Hormuz had returned to normal commercial traffic. Tankers resumed their passage. The price of Brent crude, which spiked $11 in 40 minutes, began to fall back as markets processed the outcome. Here is what the numbers say. 60 IRGCN commandos deployed. 12 reached the deck. 0 left the deck on their own. 42 attack craft launched. None returned to port under their own power. 6 Iranian missile launch platforms fired. All 6 missiles were intercepted or destroyed. USS Resolute. 0 crew killed in action. 3 treated and released for fragment injuries. 0 significant structural damage. 41 minutes, beginning to end. The F-35s flying combat air patrol overhead never fired a weapon. They didn't need to. The Resolute and her crew, 212 ordinary Americans doing an extraordinary job, handled it. Let me ask you one final question before we close, and I really mean this. Do you think this kind of incident makes the world more stable or less stable? Comment below. This is a real debate happening in think tanks right now, and your perspective matters. There is a saying in the United States Navy, "Don't give up the ship." Those words were spoken by a dying captain in 1813. They became a motto, a philosophy. a standard that 2 centuries of American sailors have carried into some of the most dangerous waters on Earth. What happened in the Strait of Hormuz on that Tuesday morning was not a movie. It was not a video game. It was the product of decades of investment, training, sacrifice, and institutional memory. Men and women who chose a life of service and then performed that service with a cold, practiced excellence that the world rarely sees until the moment it is desperately needed. Iran gambled that America's presence in the Gulf was theatrical. Russia gambled that their jamming technology would tip the scales. China gambled that deniability would protect them from consequence. All three were wrong. Not because America is invincible, no nation is, but because the United States Navy has spent 70 years making the cost of that bet so astronomically high that rational actors do not take it. And irrational actors, as history repeatedly demonstrates, learn the lesson only once. The Strait of Hormuz is open, the oil flows, the Resolute is underway. If this story moved you, share it. Subscribe for more military analysis grounded in reality, not fantasy. And drop a comment, what should we cover next?